Thank you. Well, when I got the TED Prize, I was given a wish for a better world, which TED promised to try to make happen. And I knew almost immediately what I wanted, because as a religious historian, it had long been a source of frustration to me that every single one of the major world religions had developed its own version of the Golden Rule: never treat others as you would not like to be treated yourself. And they've all said that that is the essence of faith, the test of true spirituality. And yet you didn't hear about it much. Not all religious leaders are like His Holiness the Dalai Lama or my dear friend Desmond Tutu. All too often when religious people get together, they're condemning something or condemning a sexual practice or inveighing against this or against women being bishops, etc. Now, I'm not saying that these are not important issues, but I've been consumed by the worry that now, unless we implement the Golden Rule globally, so that henceforth we treat all peoples, whoever they are, as we wish to be treated ourselves, the world is not going to be a viable place. If we'd done this in the past, we wouldn't be having so many political problems in the present. And so today, the theme of my talk tonight is to say, let's think globally for a while. Let's push the boat out from our friends and children, families, schools, the global outreach, because, as His Holiness has said time and again, we are living in an interconnected world. We cannot live without one another. If stocks go down in one part of the world, markets plummet all around the globe for the rest of the day. What happens in Afghanistan or Gaza today could have repercussions in New York or London tomorrow. And we all face the possibility of environmental catastrophe. And this demands that we really get to know one another, that we implement the Golden Rule. It requires us to look into our own hearts, discover what has given us or our people, our own nation, pain, and then refuse under any circumstance whatsoever to inflict that pain on anybody else. Never treat others as you would not like to be treated yourself. And Confucius is one of the first people who formulated the Golden Rule, as far as we know, in a way that was actually written down. And his disciples said, "Master, which of your teachings can we put into practice all day and every day? And which is the central thread that runs through all your teaching, that pulls it all together?" Confucius said, "Shu," which means likening to yourself. Never treat others as you would not like to be treated yourself. Use your own feelings, he said, as a guide to your treatment of others. And notice he says it all day and every day. We have a habit, rather, of saying when we've done something nice for somebody, well, that's my good deed for the day, as though for the next 23 hours we can return to our usual bitterness, greed, and selfishness. No, all day and every day. It requires us to dethrone ourselves from the center of our world and to put another person there. And if we do that, this is why we get happiness. We achieve ecstasis, what the Greeks called ecstasis, which means stepping outside the self. A practical way of doing it, putting yourself consistently and reflexively in somebody else's shoes, even the shoes of your enemy. Love your enemy, said Jesus. Love your enemies. And it's a difficult saying. And I'm going to do a little bit of exegesis, so hold on. Jesus was doing a bit, as far as we can see in the Gospel, of rabbinic midrash. He was taking a line from Leviticus, love your neighbor, and then saying, now I'm pushing it out further and saying, yes, love your neighbor, but also love your enemy. Love your enemies. And the word love in Leviticus Hesed, does not mean love in our sense. It was not about emotion or feeling, and we've so cheapened it in English, really, haven't we? You know, I'd love a gin and tonic. Didn't you love that movie? Or connected it solely with sentiment and feeling. We can't always love the people who hate us or drum up a bit of false emotion about it. But the word love, hesed, was used in international treaties in the ancient Near East. It was a legal term. It meant loyalty. Two kings who had previously been enemies promised to love each other, which didn't mean that they were going to fall ecstatically into one another's arms, but that they would look out for one another's interests, come to one another's aid in time of trouble, work practically for the best interest of that ally, even if it went against our immediate short-term advantage. Love your enemies. And this is the kind of love not only can we, but we must apply to all the people who are our so-called enemies. Or the world, in a world where technology and disaffection is growing by the minute, we will not have a viable world. So there is an urgency. Compassion isn't just a nice thing to do. It is not a luxury. It's the key to our survival and the key to our humanity. For Confucius, the word for, we often translate compassion or benevolence, it was ren, and it originally meant human being, to behave in a way that is humane. So love your enemies. Now, the Charter was written by leading activists and thinkers representing 6 of the major world faiths. And it was a kind of demonstration that despite our many interesting and significant differences, on this we were all in agreement, and that we could reach across the divide and work together for a better world. And we were astonished, Ted was astonished, as was I, at the response we had. And most interestingly, the people who came forward to help me most energetically and creatively were not religious leaders, but businessmen. Businessmen in the Middle East, businessmen in Pakistan, which is one of the leaders of the Charter, businessmen in the United Arab Emirates and in the United States of America. And that's been wonderful for me and for all of us, because I'm an ideas person. I sit at my desk and live with people like Confucius and the Buddha and Muhammad, peace be upon him. But I'm not you kindly said I was a practical thinker, but not in the way that a business person is, who knows how to take a project, enflesh it, and check it periodically from time to time. In Pakistan, when I launched the Charter there in 2011, I was giving 3 lectures a day, and it was a most uncompassionate schedule. And 3 lectures a day, and 1,000 people showed up each time. They were sitting on the floor all around me, desperate, feeling this is their last chance. They're working especially on education, which is and in a very careful, piloted way. And they hope to be able to create a network of compassionate schools worldwide, where the children all going through these courses in different countries can interconnect on the electronic media, and some of these differences can get broken down. Another of our major projects started in Seattle. My dear friend Ari Cohen is one of the mentors of this. Seattle declared itself in 2010 the first city of compassion. Now, that didn't mean it was compassionate, but that it was putting compassion on the agenda. And they were now, they would work practically on a project each year as a community. And raise the level of awareness so that compassion became something that the city did. And there are now 9, I think, cities have gone through the process. One in Pakistan, one in Turkey, the rest in the United States. There is a move to sort of try and create compassionate London. Now, when I heard that, I thought, what? Because this is difficult. What we have to understand now that this is not something where we just have, like on a sticker, welcome to Chicago or City of Flowers or something. This is not just a nice little cosmetic thing. It's a real challenge, because if compassion cannot somehow be incarnated in the difficult world of the cities, which is the basis of our culture, we might all as well go home. So, but how do we do it? Especially if, like London or like Washington, you are a seat of government. Now, if London declares itself a city of compassion, what are people in Iraq going to think about that? Or Gaza? Or any of the poor people who lived in our former colonies? So we have, and there are many bankers here. This is I'm not saying, I'm sure there are many compassionate bankers. But on the other hand, a sort of an aggressive commercial market does not necessarily lend itself to compassion. So we are trying, it is an exercise that demands creative, realistic, and practical thought. My study of compassion in world religions has shown me that the way this was done was to create a viable alternative to state life. The state is an aggressive institution. It's not always a kind institution. It probably can't be. I don't know. But if you take of the Buddha, he created the Sangha, which was an alternative society, sitting in the suburbs of the city, in contact with the city, not turning its back and going off into the forest, but there offering a different way for human beings to live together, with non-violence, with compassion, with respect. And the Sangha, I believe, is the oldest institution in the world. It has outlived all the states and empires of the Buddha's day. And similarly, the Confucians. Confucius was not just suggesting a nice personal faith. Confucius's philosophy and religion was deeply political, because he was living, as were many of the sages who created the Golden Rule, in societies where violence and aggression and greed had reached an unprecedented crescendo. It was the case in the India of the Buddha's day. It was certainly in the case of China in Confucius's day, which was just to embark upon a terrible 200-year period called the Warring States period, in which the states of China fought one another until only one was left, and he became the emperor. Mass destruction, 200 years worth of it. And the sages looked into this abyss in China and said, if we do not live by the Golden Rule, we will destroy each other. And that is even more true today. And the Confucians, it was always a great sorrow to Confucius that he was never able to get into government. But what they did was create, the Confucians were the chief advisors to the emperor, having a voice right into the 20th century until the revolution, creating again an alternative voice to the fiercely militaristic empire, which is, an empire is sort of aggressive. So let us try, when we are creating our compassionate cities, how can we create an alternative to the aggression of our day and make that attractive, viable, and workable? That's the challenge. And it requires a lot of creative thinking. And I am so consumed by the sense of the urgency of all this that I really feel we should be pooling our resources here. And, not just all, people are approaching me about healthcare, for example. I had 3 requests, one from Taiwan, one from Worcester in the UK, and one from Cleveland, Ohio, just in the last couple of weeks. And, your program, we should sort of sync our fortunes together and work together because we really haven't much time. And what would I like to see in global London? Number 1, a global outlook. My dream is, along the route when we've built up a network of compassionate cities, is to have twin cities. So a city in the Middle East can twin with a city in the United States. They can exchange news. And gradually, these misapprehensions we have about one another can get whittled away. Because this is terribly dangerous. We can't afford this anymore. As well as it's ruining our own health and humanity and sanity. Now, one of the things I'd like to see in a compassionate city is a sensitivity about discourse. The way we speak about one another is omniscient and unkind very often in this city. I know because I'm very good at this kind of discourse myself, and I have to keep my sharp tongue, Oxford educated, under control. I learned a lot about how to be aggressive with my speech at my tutor's knee. Now, but the way we speak about one another, oh, well, the trouble with her is, as though you could sum up the absolute mystery of a human being in a single sentence. And we do it about whole cultures. Oh, well, the trouble with Islam is. And when people are you hear them, very often, if you know something about the subject under discussion, the amount of reliable information they have could be comfortably contained on the back of a small postcard. How we can change the way we speak about one another. In the 1960s, the civil rights activists changed the way we thought about race, just as the feminists changed the way we speak about gender. It can be done, and it must be done, because we are living in a world where we simply cannot afford this kind of aggression. It is an absolute gift to extremists. It's my 12 steps, how we speak to one another and how little we know, are steps 7 and 8. And they are an essential part of compassion, to realize the limitations of our knowledge despite the age of information. Each one of us is an unrepeatable mystery, an unrepeatable revelation of one of God's hidden names, says Ibn Arabi, the wonderful 12th century Sufi theologian. Each one of us, we cannot sum people up in these soundbite ways. And one of the things we have to realize is that all of us have pain. Pain is the one thing that every human being has. It pulls us together. In ancient Greece, in the city of Athens, in the middle of its superb revival of, creation of rationality and politics, they created tragic drama. They put suffering on stage and made and periodically you'd watch somebody like Oedipus going through an agony of distress and extremity. And periodically the audience would turn, the leader of the chorus will turn to the audience and say, "Now weep for Oedipus." A man whom normally you'd shun in ordinary life because he'd broken every taboo in the book. And the audience did weep. They were not like us Brits. They didn't wipe an embarrassed tear from the corner of their eye and gulp. They wept aloud because they believed that weeping together created a bond between men. When they saw this suffering, they knew they were not alone. The first of these plays to come down to us was Aeschylus's The Persians. 7 years earlier, the Persian army had been vanquished by Athens. But before the Athenians achieved this victory, the Persians had rampaged through Athens. They'd trashed the entire city. They'd looted, they'd burned, and they'd smashed to pieces all the wonderful new temples that had been built on the Acropolis. And in his play, The Persians, Aeschylus asked his audience now to weep for the Persians. No triumph, no gloating. The Persians are seen as sister nation to the Greeks, and they're presented as a people in mourning to see the tragedy of the defeat from the Persians' point of view. This is what our art should do. This is what our films should do. This is the mission of our time, is to help us look hard into the hearts and minds of our enemies, see that they have pain, and weep because we recognize that pain in our own lives. Only then will we have peace. Thank you.